Hello everyone and welcome to a new tutorial. In today's video, we're going to see how we can apply Pareto analysis using Power BI and DAX. In our example today, Pareto analysis will help us to identify the top 80% or the top products that contributes to 80% of our volume sold in a certain period. In order to do so, we're going to walk through multiple steps. At the beginning, we need to rank our products according to the units sold in descending order. And then we need to identify the cumulative percentage for each and every product to the total units sold. This percentage for sure need to take into consideration the ranking that we did at the beginning. And then we are going to set the threshold and make sure that all other calculations are synchronized with this threshold. Finally, we can add a slicer so the user can set the threshold dynamically. Let's go directly and look at the example for today. This matrix contains a list of 25 products. You have here the product name in the first column. Then you have the units sold for each and every product and the percent of total for each and every line. So for example, the bottom brackets sold 485,000 and it is forming around 14% of the total units sold. But what if I want to look at the product that is contributing to the total units sold by around 50%? That's why I have a slicer here. If I select the 50%, you will see that the list filtered down to only 4 products, and the total percent of these 4 products is around 45 or 47.7%, which is a little bit below the 50%. If I want to increase to around 80%, you will see that the list increased to around 10 products contributing to total units sold by around 79.2%, which is a little bit below the 80%. Let's have a quick look on our data model. We have a standard star schema model containing 3 tables. First one is the sales table or the transaction table holding all the sales transactions. Also, we have 2-dimensional table or lookup tables. First one is the calendar table and the other one is the products table. Also, we have a disconnected table called measures. The only functionality of this table is just holding all the measures in order to have more organized model. If we go to the report view, I already created 2 measures. First one is total units sold. The other one is percent of all products. And I created a matrix containing the list of all the products together with the total units sold and the percent of all products. Let's try to visualize what we want to do in order to achieve our objective. Our objective is to show the products that contribute to 80% of the sales, and this need to be the highest 80%. So the first step is to just rank or to sort this table. Let me sort by the percentage. I'm going to have one click on the percent of all products, and now it is sorted. You can see that the bottom brackets 13.8%, helmets 13.3%, and so on and so forth. The next step, I need to create something like an accumulated percentage. So I have a new column here, and this column contains the cumulative percentages. And when I reach the 80%, let's say in the 10th item or so, when I reach this 80%, I tell Power BI, please stop here. This is exactly what I want to do. This cumulative percentage need to be according to the rank. So the very first step is to create a rank. And in order to do the ranking, let me do it in a new measure. I'm going to select new measure, and this will prompt me to the formula bar. I'm going to give a name for this measure. Let me call it rank, and then equal. In order to do the ranking according to the products or based on the products, I need to use the rank X function. Rank X function will require a table. This table will be the products table, so I'm going to type products and then comma the expression, which is the measure that I need to use for the ranking. In my case, it will be the total units sold. I already have this measure, so I'm going to open a square bracket and I'm going to select total units sold and then comma. I'm going to skip the third argument, and the fourth one will be the order, so it can be ascending or descending. In my case, it will be descending, so the highest total unit sales will be number 1. So I'm going to select descending, close the bracket and hit enter. Let me change the home table to be my measures table, and also I'm going to drag this measure inside my table, and now we have a new column called rank. However, you will see that it's not working properly. Why? Because of the filter context. Remember that the bottom brackets have been sold many times inside my transaction table. The filter context now is filtering all the transactions to be only bottom brackets for the first line. That's why you have the bottom brackets as number 1. Assume that you have table containing one product, so this product will be always number 1. Same for helmets, same for gloves, and so on and so forth. In order to overcome this, I need to do some changes in my measure. So I'm going to select it once more, and I need to remove the impact of the filter context. I'm going to do this using the all function. I'm going to wrap my products table around an all function. This will remove the impact of the filter context in each and every line. So I'm going to close the bracket and then hit the check mark, and now your ranking is working perfectly. You will see that the highest percentage 13.8, which is basically number 1 rank, and then helmets 13.3, number 2, and so on and so forth. Now we need to add the cumulative percentage. What this means, I need to add a new measure in this matrix. So I'm going to add a new measure here, and this measure will contain the cumulative percentage or the running total for percentages. Meaning that in the first line, I'm going to see the 13.8. In the second line, I'm going to see 13.8 plus 13.3. The third line, 13.8 plus 13.3 plus 12.1, and so on and so forth. And this will be for the entire table. In order to do so, I need to add a new measure. So I'm going to click a new measure, and this measure, let's call it the running total percentage or percent running total, and then equal Alt and Enter. At the beginning, I'm not going to use the ranking. I have ranking from 1 to 25, but at the beginning, just to understand how this would work, I'm not going to use the rank. However, I can use the product ID number. I have product IDs, column called product IDs, and it contains numbers from almost 1 to 25. So I'm going to use this as reference for my running total. In order to do so, I need to change the filter context for each and every line. Let's say for product ID number 2002, we need to look at 2002 plus 2001. For product ID number 2003, we need to look at 2003, 2002, and also 2001, and so on and so forth. In order to change the filter context, usually I use calculate, so I'm going to use the calculate function. I need an expression or a calculation. The calculation will be one of my measures, which is basically the percent of all products. Alt Enter, and I'm going to use the filter function. Filter function will need a table. In our case, my table will be the products table because I'm going to use one of its column, which is basically the product ID. However, if I used the product table as it is, the filter context again will impact in each and every line, will impact the product table, and will consider each and every product, each and every single product as a separate table. In order to remove this effect, I'm going to use the all function with the product table. So I'm going to type all and then close the bracket. So my table will be all products, not only the products, and then comma, Alt Enter. I need to add a filter expression. I need to use the products ID, so I'm going to type products, and I have a column for products ID. I need to compare this with a value. I cannot compare a column with a column, so I need a scalar value. I need an aggregation function in order to check exactly where am I and take all the lines until I reach a certain product ID number. So I'm going to use less than or equal as a comparison, and the aggregation function I can use something like max, and then again I'm going to give the product ID once more, close the bracket for the max, Alt Enter, close the bracket for filter, Alt Enter, and close the bracket for the calculate function. I can hit the check mark. Also, I'm going to change the home table once more to measures, and this will be a percentage. Let me try to drag it and drop it inside my matrix. Here it is, percent running total. Now I have a cumulative percentages. However, I want to check how this works. So I need to change the column on the most left. Instead of being the product name, I need to change the product ID. So I'm going to my visualization. I'm going to X out the product name, and I'm going to put the product ID. Let me sort by the product ID. Let me just change the formatting a bit. I'm going to have only one decimal place for the comparison to be very accurate. So in the first line, product 2001, 13.3, 13.3. Second line, 2002, 4.9. In the running total or rank percent running total, it's 18.2, which is 13.3 plus 4.9. In the third line, I have added also the 5.7, 23.9, adding 6.7, 30.6, and so on and so forth until I reach the 100% in product 2025. I believe so far so good. However, I need to consider the ranking, because if I just now sorted the percentages, you will see the running total will be completely irrelevant. So I need to take the ranking into consideration inside the percent running total, and this will be our next step. Now let's try to take the ranking that we did at the very beginning inside the percent running total that we calculate in the previous step. In order to do so, I'm going to select the rank measure. I'm going to copy the formula, the measure that we did together, the rank x function, and then I'm going back to the running total percent. I need to store this calculation inside a variable. So I'm going to take a new line on the top. I'm going to declare a variable var, the keyword for declaring variables. Let me call this rnk for rank and then equal control v. Now it is stored into a variable. I need to use a return with var, but before doing that, I'm going also to put the calculation for running total inside another variable. Alt enter var. Let me call this rt underscore percent and then equal. At the end, I'm going to use return. Alt and enter. Let me use return. I'm going to return the final calculation rt underscore percent. As we stand right now, we didn't include the ranking inside the calculation of running total percent, and this is exactly what we are going to do right now. We are going to change the filter expression that we have inside the filter function, and instead of looking at the current product that we are checking now, the current ID product, and take all the IDs before this ID, I want to look at the rank and take all the ranks before this rank. In order to do so, I'm going to use the same calculation, the rank x calculation. However, I'm going to compare it with the rank variable that I stored. In this way, I'm going to check the current rank and take all the ranks before this rank. If I'm in rank number 2, I'm taking with me rank 2 and rank 1. If I'm inside rank number 3, I'm taking 3, 2, 1, and so on and so forth. Let's hit the check mark. Percentage is already changed. Let's go and look at the table right now. You have the first rank 13.8, 13.8, second rank 13.3 plus 13.8, 27.1, third rank 12.1 plus 13.3 plus 13.8, 39.1, and so on and so forth till the end of the table. Let's try to put back the product name. So I'm going back to the visualization. I'm going to get rid of the product ID and I'm going to use the product name. The rank is still working perfectly, and also the percent running total. Now I can come and say, please stop here, stop at the 80%. So you need to stop at the wheels. The last item I need to see is the wheels, which is 79.2, very close to the 80%. Let's try to do it together. Back to running total. In the very final step, after the return keyword, I'm going to use if. And inside the if statement, I'm going to use the logical test. If the RT percentage is less than or equal 80%, 0.8, comma, the result if true will be the RT percent, comma, the result if false will be a blank or empty. So I can just ignore it and close the bracket and hit the check mark. And here you go. If you look at the new measure now, it stops at the 79.2%. Finally, I managed to stop my measure percent running total at almost 80% or 79.2. The next step is to get rid of the rest of the rows, and I need the full table to stop at the 79.2. In order to do so, I need to do some changes inside the other measures, total units sold and percent of all products. Rank, I'm going to get rid of it anyway, so no need to change inside the rank. And instead of just changing inside these two measures, I'm going to create another two measures, and I'm going to try to make them behave like the percent of running total and stop at the 72.9. Let's try together. I'm going to new measure. From the formula bar, I'm going to give a new name. Let me call this top product sales equals, alt enter. I'm going to use calculate once more in order to change the filter context. Calculate and then the expression. This time I'm going to calculate the units sold. So I'm going to use this exact same measure, open square bracket, total units sold, and then comma. Now I need to do filter, I need to do filtration, so I can alter or change the filter context that I have inside this table. Alt enter. Let me again use the filter function. What I need to filter, I need to filter the product table and then comma the filter expression. Inside the filter expression, I'm going just to add the measure that I already created that stops at the 79.2, which is basically the percent running total. Open square bracket, percent running total, alt enter, close for filter function, alt enter once more and close for calculate. Now what filter function will do exactly? It will reduce the number of the rows inside the products table, or do a filtration for the products table based on the value calculated inside the percent running total. If there is a value, this filter function will include this product or this line. If there is no value or null value, it will exclude this product or this line from the table. That's why now the total units sold will behave exactly same as the percent running total. Let me hit the check mark. I'm going to change the home table to measures and comma or the thousand separator. Let me try this measure. I'm going to drag it inside my matrix, and here you go. You have your units sold and stops exactly at the same row when the percent running total is 79.2. Let me do the same for the percent of all products. I'm going to take a copy. Top product sold, I'm going to select, Control C to copy, and then new measure, Control V. Let me change the name. I'm going to call it top product percent. Also, I need to change the expression that I'm using. Instead of using the total units sold, I'm going to use percent of all products. Hit the check mark. Now I need a percent with only one decimal place, and the home table is already measured. No problem. I can just drag this into my matrix. And here you go, it stops exactly at the same row, and the total is 79.2, exactly the same as the last row in the cumulative all the running percent total. Now I need to organize my matrix. I need to get rid of the other columns that I don't need inside my final report. So from visualization, I'm going to take out total units sold, percent of all product, rank, and also I can get rid of the running total. I can just sort my visual by top product percent, and here you go, 13%, 13.3, 12.1, total is 79.2, and this is exactly what I want. At the very final part of this video, I want to see how we can make the percentage selected dynamic. So I can add a slicer. Using this slicer, I can select the threshold or the percent that I want. It can be 50%, 60%, up to 100%. In order to do so, I need to add a slicer, and for the slicer, I need a column contains the value that I'm going to select from. In order to do so, I'm going to create a new table, and there is multiple ways to do a new table inside your model, but I'm going to use a very straightforward and easy function to create my list of values. I'm going to select the modeling tab. Inside modeling tab, I can select new table. This will prompt me also to the formula bar. Let me give this table a name. I'm going to call it threshold, and then equal. I'm going to use a function called generate series. Generate series will create a single column table contains some value based on the inputs that I'm going to give. The first input required is what is the start value. For me, it will be like 50%, 0.5, and then comma, what is the end value? The end value should be 100%, which is basically 1, and then comma, the increment. Increment will be also 10% more or less, so I can add also 0.1, close the bracket and hit the check mark. Let me check my new table inside the table view. Here you go, one column, the column named value. Automatically I can just change, double click, let me call it threshold, and also I can see the values from 0.5 up to 1. I can change the formatting to percentages, and I can reduce the decimal place to only 0. Now my column is ready. I can go back to the report view. I can create my slicer now. While selecting any empty area inside my canvas, I can hit the slicer. Let me resize and put it here beside this table. From my data section, here is my table threshold, and here is my column threshold. I'm going to drop it inside my new create slicer. I need to change the settings. Let me go to format your visual, slicer settings, and I'm going to select the style as vertical list. Now I have list of all the percentages. I can select 50, 60 or whatever. Now I want to make my two measures impacted by my selection. At the very beginning, I need to start to capture the value of my selection. In order to do so, I'm going to create a new measure. So new measure, and I'm going to call this measure threshold selection, then equal, I'm going to use a function called selected value. This function is just capturing the value selected from specific column. In our case, the column inside the table threshold and the column also called threshold. This is the first requirement for this function. And then comma, the second requirement will be an alternate result. What this means that suppose that I'm not selecting any value from the slicer, or even the slicer has multiple selection. Selected value handles only one value. So what will happen if I didn't select anything or I selected more than one value? In this case, I'm going to use an alternate result, which will be 100%, or I can type it as 1, and then close the bracket and hit the check mark. I can test this measure. I'm going to add a card from visualization while selecting any empty space inside the canvas. I'm going to select a card. Let me resize and put it somewhere here. Now I can drop it inside my newly created card, and you can see it is not capturing anything. That's why the alternate value is 1. If I go to my slicer and start to select 50%, it is also reflected inside my card. I can change to 60, 70 or 100, or even clear the selection, so the value captured very well. Now I can take this value or take this measure and put it inside our original calculation, which is basically the percent running total. I'm going to delete this card, selecting back percent running total. In the final step, when I put here the 0.8, I can just delete it and open a square bracket and select the newly created measure threshold selection, hit the check mark. Now my two measures are 100% linked to this slicer. I can select 50%, it will give me 47.7, 60%, it will give me 55.5, 70, 80, whatever selection. Let's try the 100%. If I select the 100%, you'll see only 99%, and this is a small error that we need to get rid of. It's basically because of the aggregation and the rounding. So in order to just get rid of this, I'm going to add once more inside the percent running total, and I'm going to add a very small value to my threshold selection. I'm going to add plus 0.001, something like that, and then hit the check mark. Now here you go, while selecting 100%, it is 100%. If I clear the filter, the alternate value is 1, so everything is working perfectly. Now I can select 50, 60 or whatever I want. That was all for today. Thank you very much for your time, and see you in the next video, and bye.